Hey everybody, I'm Justin Czar with bowhunting.com. Welcome back to another Bow Hunt 101 video. Today we're going to be talking about longer axle to axle versus shorter axle to axle. We're going to be going over the technical differences of these bows, how they affect how you shoot and hunt with them. So let's get started. All right, first things first, let's talk about axle to axle length, what it is, how it affects the bow, and why it may affect what type of bow you want to use when you're out bow hunting. So axle to axle length, as the name implies, is the distance between the axles. Of course, the axles run through the cams or the wheels and run through the limbs, and they hold everything together. So the distance from this axle to this axle is going to be your axle to axle length naturally. I am holding in my hands a Matthews V331. This bow happens to have the axle to axle length built right into the name. They don't all have that, but as the name implies, this is a 31-inch axle to axle bow. By all accounts, for today's modern hunting bows, this one's right in the middle. You're going to find most of your compound hunting bows nowadays are going to be somewhere between 30 and 34 inches. That seems to be kind of the sweet spot, those 4 inches. This one's 31, so it's just a touch on the lower side of that. Now, we're also going to look at the Matthews V327. So this is the 27. Now, this is an ultra compact bow. You know, up until a few years back, you didn't really see bows that were sub 30-inch axle to axle. That was kind of unheard of. The Z7 Extreme was the first bow that I recall that I ever hunted with that was under 30 inches axle to axle. I think that was 28 if I recall. But this is a 27-inch axle to axle bow. As you can see, it's significantly more compact than the already compact 31-inch bow, right? So, you know, if you were to look back, you know, many years ago when I started bow hunting, and I hate to admit it's been 25 years since I started bow hunting, you know, bows back in those days had very short risers, very long limbs. And axle to axle length on those bows was typically well over 40 inches, 42, 45, 48. I mean, some of them were over 50 inches long, right? By today's standard, those bows were huge. But as risers have gotten longer and limbs have gotten shorter and more parallel or even beyond parallel, we've seen that axle to axle length really start to creep down and to give us these super, super compact bows that we have today, like this 27-inch V3. Now, the biggest thing that you hear people talk about when they start looking at axle to axle length, like longer versus shorter. A lot of guys talk about forgiveness. They seem to believe that longer axle to axle bows are more forgiving. They're easier to shoot at long distances. They're accurate. There's a lot of things that people throw out there. And while there may be some validity to those, when you start looking at guys that are, you know, doing target archery, that are shooting, you know, super far distances, and where, you know, the difference between winning and losing a tournament might be a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch, right? There is some validity, and that's why most of your target archers are shooting bows that are, you know, at the low side, they're high 30s going into the 40s usually for most of your target guys, but they're also shooting a lot less weight, a lot lighter arrows. It's an entirely different setup when you get into the target world versus the hunting world. You know, in the hunting world, most of us, again, for the most part, I'm making some generalizations, are shooting 40 yards and in. For the vast majority of people. In fact, I don't know the last time I shot an animal over 30 yards. Most of my shots are going to be 20 yards and in. That's the joy of bow hunting, is trying to see how close you can get to your animal. So when you're looking at, you know, bow hunting distances, and your average bow hunter that isn't a world-class archer that's competing at the highest levels, the difference between a 31 and a 27-inch axle to axle bow is going to be negligible at best. In fact, you're going to find some people shoot the shorter draw length bows better than the longer draw length, or not draw length, axle to axle. Sorry about that. But in any case, it comes down to really personal preference and what you like the most. The biggest difference between these bows in the terms of how they feel and how they shoot is going to be the string angle. You know, if you take my draw length is 29 inches. When I draw this bow back, it has more severe string angle, which means the string is angled down more than my longer bow, which is a little bit less of a string angle. So it affects things like the height of your peep sight, your nose button, how the string lays across your face, your nose, the corner of your mouth, like all those angles change between these different bows. So it's important to just find the one that you like the most, that fits you the best, it feels more comfortable, and that you shoot the best. Now, couple other things to take into consideration is going to be your hunting style. And the reason that a lot of guys are attracted to these super short, compact bows is because as bow hunters, we get ourselves into a lot of tight and precarious situations. Not all the time, but a good amount of the times, right? If you're hunting out of a ground blind and you need to maneuver around, there's no question having a shorter axle to axle bow so you're not worried about hitting windows, hitting the roof, you're a lot more maneuverable inside of that ground blind, the shorter bow is gonna win every time. Saddle hunting is something that's becoming increasingly popular every year. And if you guys haven't done it, there is a lot of kind of maneuvering around your ropes and around your bridge, whether you're coming up and over the top, whether you're trying to sneak underneath, things like that. Having a shorter, more compact bow in that situation is a distinct advantage. If you're a guy that packs his gear in a long ways, and let's say you're strapping this thing onto your back on the way in, having something that's shorter and more compact, again, has its advantages. You know, outside of shootability and accuracy, there's a lot of advantages to a shorter, more compact bow. Of course, we're only talking 4 inches difference on this particular bow. It's not huge, but the reality is, you know, even a ½ an inch can make a lot of difference, you know, in a hunting scenario. So that's just something to keep in mind. I would encourage everybody to go out, shoot all of these bows, try to find the one that works the best for you. Now, the only caveats to this whole thing from a technical perspective are going to be guys at either end of the draw length spectrum. If you have a really long draw length, 31 inches or above, these bows aren't going to work for you. You just can't get enough draw length out of them. The cables aren't long enough in order to get a longer draw length. So these things are like, you know, 29, 30 inch draw is about the max you're going to get out of these really short bows. So if you do have a longer draw length, you're going to want to go with the longer axle to axle. Conversely, if you have a really short draw length, if you're somebody in that 25, 26 inch range, these shorter bows are perfect for you. They work really, really well, and they actually go down to lower draw lengths than the longer axle to axle bows. So from a technical perspective, it's important to keep in mind when you're going bow shopping what your draw length is, because that will dictate kind of which direction you want to go. But for most of us that are going to be in the middle, 27 to let's say 29.5, 30 inches, right in that range, either one of these bows is going to shoot just fine for you. It's really a matter of personal preference. And I know some of you guys aren't going to like that. A lot of times you watch these videos and you want a winner, right? Which one's better, the longer or the shorter? The reality is they're both great. They both get the job done. They both shoot very, very accurately, and they're more than capable of harvesting any animal you shoot with them. The key is you just have to become proficient with your weapon before you hit the field. So there you have it, guys. Just a kind of a brief overview of a longer axle to axle versus a shorter axle to axle bow and why you may want to pick one over the other. Hope you guys enjoyed this video as well as the rest of our Bow Hunt 101 series. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns or ideas for other videos you'd like us to make, feel free to leave those comments below. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.